The doctors had tried everything. The medicines lined up on the marble counter, the machines hummed softly through the night, and the house stayed quiet, heavy with worry. Still, the boy did not get better. In a mansion filled with money, power, and comfort, one small child lay weak, pale, and tired of living. And then one evening, a simple nanny bent down, looked under the bed, and found something no doctor had ever thought to look for. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe, like, and comment below. Your support helps us keep sharing stories that warm the heart and remind us of the power of kindness. This is Kindness Diaries, and today's story might change how you see care, love, and healing. Ethan was 9 years old and the son of a self-made millionaire. His father, Richard Hale, built his fortune from nothing. He believed in hard work, discipline, and control. He could fix problems in the boardroom with one phone call. But when it came to his son's health, he was powerless. Ethan was always sick. Some days it was a fever. Other days it was stomach pain, headaches, or exhaustion so deep he could barely lift his head. Doctors called it unexplained chronic illness. Specialists flew in from other states. Tests were done again and again. Nothing ever explained why the boy kept fading. Ethan's mother had passed away years earlier. Since then, the mansion felt cold despite its beauty. The staff spoke in whispers. The boy's room was spotless, white, and silent, like a hospital disguised as a bedroom. Nannies never lasted long. Some were too strict. Some were too scared. Some simply didn't know what to do with a child who barely smiled. Clara was in her early 30s, gentle-spoken, and ordinary in every way. She wasn't impressed by the mansion or the money. She had cared for children before, especially ones who felt lonely. From the first day, she noticed something different about Ethan's sickness. He didn't just look ill. He looked sad. Clara didn't rush him. She didn't force smiles or games. She sat quietly by his bed and read to him when he felt too weak to speak. She listened when he talked about his mother. She stayed when he cried at night, even when he pretended he wasn't. Slowly, Ethan began to trust her. One afternoon, Clara noticed Ethan staring at the floor, his eyes fixed on the space beneath his bed. When she asked him what he was thinking about, he shrugged and said, "Nothing." But his voice trembled. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, Clara knelt down and gently lifted the edge of the bedspread. What she saw made her heart stop. Under the bed was a small wooden box, worn and scratched, like it had been hidden there for a long time. Inside were objects carefully arranged. A framed black and white photo of a woman smiling. A small crucifix. A folded sweater that smelled faintly of lavender. And a handwritten note. Clara picked up the note with shaking hands. It read, "Mom, please don't forget me. I try to be brave." Clara sat on the floor and cried silently. The next morning, Ethan woke up coughing and weak, but when he saw Clara sitting beside him, he noticed her eyes were red. "You saw it," he whispered. Clara nodded. She didn't scold him. She didn't panic. She simply took his hand. Ethan nodded. "Dad says thinking about her makes me worse. So I hide her. I don't want to make him angry." Those words broke something inside Clara. Ethan wasn't sick because his body was failing. He was sick because his heart was carrying grief alone. Clara spoke to Richard that evening. At first, he was defensive. He insisted he had done everything possible for his son. He said emotions didn't cause illness. He said Ethan needed strength, not sadness. But Clara stood her ground. "He needs kindness," she said. "And permission to feel." That night, Richard went into Ethan's room alone. For the first time, he knelt down and looked under the bed himself. When he saw the box, his knees nearly gave out. He recognized the sweater. He recognized the photo. And the note. It shattered him. Richard realized that in trying to protect his son from pain, he had taught him to hide love. The next morning, Richard canceled meetings. For the first time in years, he stayed home. He sat on Ethan's bed and didn't talk about doctors or tests. He talked about Ethan's mother. He laughed. He cried. He apologized. Something changed after that. Clara helped Ethan bring the box out from under the bed. They placed the photo on his nightstand. They talked openly about his mom. They shared stories. They honored her memory instead of burying it. Slowly, Ethan's color returned. He started eating again. Sleeping better. Laughing. The doctors were stunned. Tests showed improvement they couldn't explain. But Clara knew the truth. Kindness had done what medicine could not. Months passed. Ethan grew stronger. He started school again. He smiled without forcing it. One day, Ethan asked Clara, "Did you make me better?" Clara smiled and shook her head. "You were always strong. You just needed someone to care." Richard changed too. He became softer. He listened. He learned that wealth could not replace warmth, and control could not replace compassion. Clara eventually left the job, as nannies often do. But on her last day, Ethan hugged her tightly and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me." Years later, Richard funded a children's wellness center focused not just on medicine, but emotional care. On the wall hung a simple quote. "Kindness heals what science cannot measure." And somewhere, in a small bedroom no longer filled with fear, a boy slept peacefully, knowing he was loved. Because sometimes, the greatest healing doesn't come from what we give. It comes from what we finally choose not to hide. If this story touched your heart, remember this: kindness is never small. It can change lives, mend invisible wounds, and bring light where pain has been hidden for far too long. Spread kindness today, and you might heal someone in ways you'll never fully see.